What does it mean to be a citizen? Not a voter, not a taxpayer, not a passport holder, a citizen. My guest today has spent 40 years trying to answer that question, not in lecture halls or think tanks, but in forests and villages on foot. In 1984, at the age of 19, most of his classmates were cramming for exams. He walked into the rural forests of Karnataka and founded an organization. No funding, no roadmap, just a medical degree in progress and a conviction that wouldn't let him sleep. He built hospitals, he built schools, he fought corruption from the inside, a special investigator for the Karnataka Lokayukta. In 2008, he walked 350 kilometers through 120 villages to teach ordinary people how to use the Right of Information Act. Not because anyone asked him to, but because he believed that democracy only works when its people know how to use it. He went on to become a Mason Fellow at Harvard's Kennedy School, not at 22, but in his 40s after 2.5 decades in the field. He became the Frank T. Rhodes Professor at Cornell, where students later named him one of the faculty members who most shaped their lives. He sits on India's Capacity Building Commission, shaping how the country trains its civil servants through Mission Karma Yogi. He published Power Within, a book that required the kind of intellectual courage that is increasingly rare. He's a doctor, a founder, a scholar, a teacher, a corruption fighter, and above all, a citizen, a true citizen of our country. Welcome to Luminary Lounge. I'm your host, Dr. Aruna Muralidhar, and today I have the privilege of sitting across Dr. R. Balasubramaniam, known to everyone who loves him simply as Dr. Balu. Dr. Balu, welcome to the lounge. It is a genuine honor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aruna. It's as much an honor for me to be here.
Thank you, sir. So in 2008, you actually walked 350 kilometers on foot through 120 villages to teach people about the Right to Information Act. What exactly did you feel like to put your foot on the road, and what were you actually afraid of? Was there a moment during those 350 kilometers where you genuinely wanted to stop and figure out what you were doing?
Actually, there's a history to the reason why I walked.
Mm-hmm.
The superficial reason which I disclose is I walked because I wanted to popularize the Right to Information Act, make it a tool to fight corruption. But the real reason was more an internal test, a test of my own self and my own understanding of Swami Vivekananda, because I was named professor and head of the Vivekananda chair at the University of Mysore. And as for the first talk I gave, it was a jam-packed hall. People were, overwhelmed with emotion and how I spoke and what I spoke of Swamiji. One of the all in the front row, all the earlier chair professors were sitting, and I still remember a man whom I respected a lot, a great Kannada literary figure, Dr. Prabhu Shankara. He came up and hugged me and said he was the first professor of the chair, and said, "Naan ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ರೆ 5-6 ಜನ ಬರೋರು, ನೀನ್ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ರೆ 400 ಜನ ಎದ್ದು ನಿಂತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಚಪ್ಪಾಳೆ ತಟ್ತಾರೆ." I think the moment he said that, something went to my head. And I thought, wow, I must be a good speaker. Maybe I understand Vivekananda very well, and therefore people applaud me. Well, I was driving back to Saragur, and I was elated. When somebody as senior and respected as Dr. Prabhu Shankara says this, it really lands home. But it suddenly hit me also that Vivekananda said something else. He said, remember that you're not the doer. And all, the statement goes exactly like this. And I think it was written for people like me. He says, all the hospitals you build, all the schools you construct can crumble to dust in one earthquake, can get washed away in one floods. So don't think that you are the doer. You're the God who gave birth to the cow, the cow which gave birth to the calf knows how to give it milk also. So God who gave birth to all of us knows how to take care of all of us. So don't, just remember you're the instrument of change. The lesson of the Gita, where we talk about, the entire concept of the tyaga that we do, the kartatva tyaga. And I suddenly realized that I was not worthy of being the chair, the professor of the Vivekananda chair. And I said, I felt very empty. And I said, I don't seem to understand Vivekananda enough that I can't even appreciate this. So in a moment of, I would say even then, in a moment of egoistic self-pity, even in self-pity, we can become egoistic. I said, I'm going to walk till I discover myself and discover the Swami Vivekananda that I genuinely wanted to appreciate and understand. And I challenged myself and said, if my convictions in his message is true, if my faith in the Lord that manages everything is true, I'm going to walk without taking any money with me, without asking for any food. If people feed me, I will eat. If people give me a place to stay, I will sleep. And started walking. And a lot of people joined me, and people were overwhelmingly uh, hospitable. So it was more a test of my own faith in the inner power or the inner power of Swami Vivekananda and his message. But you need an outer layer to tell the world. You can't tell the world that, they'll think I'm already, people think I'm crazy. That would establish my craziness. So I just said I'm going to use this opportunity for next external action, because Swamiji always says, Atmano mokshartam jagat hitaya cha. As much as you want self-evolution, you also want an expression for the world to become better. So I thought the outer expression can be talking about the message of right to information, talking about the message of using it as a tool to fight corruption. And so that's how I walked. And so we just decided we'll start from Saragur, walk through 5 districts, close to 200 villages. We finally ended up walking 420 kilometers, reached the statue of Mahatma Gandhi on MG Road in Bangalore. So I had
Right.
politicians walking with me, I had young people walking with me, I had people joining from this village to the next village. I had bureaucrats walking with me. And finally, I had my mentor, former Chief Justice of India, Justice M.N. Venkatachalaya, receiving me at the Mahatma Gandhi statue. There are several moments when I felt like giving up,
Hmm. Hmm.
not because I was tired or I was questioning my own understanding of what I was doing this for, but once when in one particular village, every village people would feast us and give us a lot of good things to eat. It is all made by the community, and I believe to the test of community conviction, my own conviction in community power and community processes that made me start the walk. And in one place, in all his enthusiasm, a Gram Panchayat secretary decided to forcibly collect money to feed us. So that was, and I got to know this after we finished our meal. So at that moment, I thought this could happen again. This could happen. We are halfway through the walk, and they said if
Hmm.
it can
Hmm.
happen in one place, they can tell me that the community participated. But then, if something like this happens again, what am I walking for? So I
Hmm.
might as well drop this walk here and go back. But then we found another way out, and we took his details and sent him whatever he spent later for it, because I had to virtually, sort of, in a sense, break my own belief that we should not spend any money. I would have rather fasted that day or starved than having eaten that food that he fed us. But that was only a moment when I felt like giving up. But there are
Okay.
also moments of ecstasy and
Yes, yeah, I'm sure. So when you actually interacted with, say, let's say a family in a village, talking to them about the right to information, how did your conversation go? It would be nice to know a few
no, in the
words.
villages, it was very, very good. People were interested. People actually wanted to know how to do these things. As I
Uh-huh.
got closer to Bangalore city, I think outskirts of the Kanakpura road towards Bangalore, people didn't care a damn. People would come and ask me, there must be some reason why you are doing this. Half the time they didn't know Kannada. They would say, "Neno ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಸಿಗ್ಬೇಕಿದ್ರಲ್ಲಿ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದೀರಿ," and people would say, "ಹಿಂದಿ में बता दीजिए मुझे," or they would say things like, nobody does this like with nobility in their hearts. There must be some real reason you may want to stand for an election, all this kind of stuff. But what really touched my heart, I still remember that incident was, near in a village near in Mandya district, near Malavalli, I think. The one elderly woman was selling flowers on the in the town main street thoroughfare as we were walking through, blistering hot summer. And I just went up to her and was explaining the right to information, and she very patiently listened to me. I'm absolutely certain she wouldn't have understood what I was talking to her. And we were not giving that book. We had made a small book of the act and how to use the act and the application form template and all that. So we are charging 10 rupees for it, because I always believe nothing should be given free to anybody, and there should be a price to everything we give them. And she bought a copy, and she was completely illiterate, not understanding what is explained, but she got a copy, and that really made me curious. And in all my sincerity, I asked her, "ಇದ್ ಯಾಕ್ ತಗೊಂಡ್ರಿ ನೀವು? ಈ ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಏನು ಉಪಯೋಗ?" And she told me, "ಈ ಬಿಸಿಲಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ನಡ್ಕೊಂಡ್ ಬಂದಿದ್ದೀರಲ್ಲ, ನನ್ನ ಕೈಲಿ ಇನ್ನೇನೂ ಮಾಡಕ್ಕಾಗದೆ ಹೋದ್ರು ಒಂದು ಪುಸ್ತಕ ಆದ್ರೂ ತಗೊಂಡು ನಿಮ್ಗೆ ಪ್ರೋತ್ಸಾಹ ಕೊಡೋದ್ ಬೇಡವೇ ನಾನು? This is India. This is a real India. This is the India that lives in our villages. Unknown to, I don't even know her, right? And she's a person who I have no relationship with. And her heart melts for me walking in the sun and says, I may not understand this, I can't read this, but I want to make sure I participate. That is the real hospitable citizen that you can see in India too.
Rusa. Oh, that must have been such an elating feeling, I'm sure.
It was.
Right.
It was.
It must have made it worth it, just that incident.
You immediately realize that this is the India I need to learn about and live with.
Sure. Absolutely, sir. So you've done this much. I mean, I'm just going to digress a little bit because I need to understand the power of impact measurement. So with that walk across 200 villages, 450 kilometers, what, at the end of it, did you feel, what kind of impact did you make? I mean, was there any way of getting the reflection from that endeavor, let's say?
Like I said, there are two reasons why I set out to walk. Right? One was an internal conquest of myself. One was an external expression of seva, or in some way being useful to society. I'll talk about the second one first, which is more easily measurable. A couple of team members, I asked them to drive down this route after the walk, after a month after the walk, going village to village, trying to meet the people we spoke to, met, and asked them, what is the walk? What difference has it made? And there's one elderly lady who said, I bought this book again. She was another person who had just bought this book from one of our team members, giving it across. And she said, I didn't understand this. I got my grandchild to read this book to me. And the child told me that we can actually maybe apply to the local Tahsildar's office to find out why is your widow pension not coming for the last 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Let's ask this information and see. And she said, my grandchild wrote the application. We paid 10 rupees and we applied for it. And a month later, the revenue inspector came and said, we made a mistake. You deserve this. And I got all my arrears back and my pension got restarted. So to me, that is an expression of impact, right? And we don't even think it's important, but for that lady, it makes a difference. For us, it could just be one statistics, but for her, it makes a life-changing impact. For me personally, it demonstrated India truly lives in a villages, not as a village, but as a community construct, right? The abstraction of a community is very difficult to explain to urbanites. Because in our lives today, in an urban situation, we are not really engaged with what happens to us as a community. We are more engaged in what happens to me as a person, maximum to my family members or to my relatives who live in the same city. But we don't really, our heart doesn't really feel for the people around us in that deep sense. To a great extent, India, especially then, before all the onslaught of Netflix, Amazon, and all the TV, OTT started, where people are becoming more and more insular and within the constraint of the television screens. Those days when I walked, it was very strong and powerful. So it reassured to me that India's community construct is a very powerful social capital that we have to build for this country. And how do we sustain it? Second, it also showed me that faith can never be explained. Faith has to be experienced. I remember a very famous saying of Shirdi Sai Baba. He says, when a lot of people talk of Shraddha in different ways, he had a very simplistic way of talking of Shraddha or faith. He said, it's not, it's about, it's not just about what you believe, how deeply you believe in something, but it's about how patient, how I would say, I'm trying to find the right words that he was using. It's he believed in patience and in faith, and in I to me that Shraddha that he's And the Shraddha that he spoke about was much deeper. It's of how you conducted yourself during testing times, right? It's not about when everything is going well, we can say, oh, I have great faith in God and He takes care. But when your test of that faith itself is,
Questioned.
thrown at you, and then you ask yourself, do I still have that deep sense of surrender and sharanagati,
Yes.
which is the powerful force? This was a test of my faith in not only a personality called Vivekananda, but in the message of Swamiji, the Vedantic message of Swamiji of seeing God in everybody, seeing yourself as an instrument of change, and not and trying to eliminate the I from your thinking. It's not easy, and I have been tested. I still feel tested a lot. The sense of I takes over many times, and then the beauty is you recover faster than what it took me to recover then. So
Right.
experience teaches you that you are insignificant, and then you recover faster. So this
True, sir.
sense of the enormous inner space that I never experienced is what I could experience. I could experience the power of speech in an external way as much as the power of silence in an internal way. So all these were powerful, life-changing moments for me. It showed my resilience, both in internal resilience as well as the external resilience. So much so that I now repeat those walks. Now maybe I don't have the time or the space to do 400 kilometers or 420 that I did then. Even in this December, I had not done it for the last 4 5 years. Post-COVID, I had not continued it. Then I went into government. I didn't want to do it. But this time I took leave and walked in the villages of Dharwad for a week, for 5 days, maybe 70, 80 kilometers. I call it now the walk within. Earlier, I used to call it Jagriti Yatra, Jagriti for myself and Jagriti for the people. But now I say walk within. So we half a day we walk, we understand communities, we talk, we interact. The remaining half a day, it's walking in silence. And then you reflect on the walk, both the silence as well as the talking. So
Okay.
it's evolved, but the impact is very similar.
Wow. I mean, I think this is something that all of us must somehow inculcate in our own lives, despite being busy professionals. Indeed,
Maybe
very
next year you should
inspiring.
join me on the walk.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt. So, you have been a doctor, a Harvard fellow, a Cornell professor, and yet you call yourself a citizen above all else. And I can see why. But why that specific word, and what does it look like as a daily practice? Let's say, what does a bad citizen day look like for you? How do we inculcate civic sense? If we're looking at India, I mean, developed India by 2047, how can that internal shift happen in every listener of ours for making a better citizen? I think this is a very important question which I would like to ask you now.
Citizen in a usual construct, like you yourself said in your beginning of the conversation, is just somebody who holds a passport or somebody who casts his vote, and then that's the expressions of citizenship. Those are just a policy expression where you have been given some entitlements for being a member of a country. But that's not citizenship. Citizenship is a much deeper abstraction, a very deep. There's an intellectual appreciation of it. There's an emotional appreciation of it. The intellectual is easy to define and draw a boundary, but the emotional ownership of your country, the emotional ownership of the people living in your country, the emotional ownership of the way your country is seen by outside the country and what the country represents. Emotionally, I would say the pride you can take for saying that my country has got a huge civilizational wisdom which can help the world and make it a better place. There's so many ways you can express it. It's not just a geographical entity, but a civilizational space in which you understand the connect that you have. It's like you're a gynecologist, it's like a umbilical cord deeply connected to the placenta of civilization. And then you draw your nourishment from it, recognizing that your nourishment comes from that very source. And you can never really cut it off. Bad citizen is when you cut it off and you think that you don't need it. But in reality, you can't. And I'll give a small example. It just happened last week. I just come to Mysore and I was just driving someplace and I saw a very well educated man in his mid 40s driving on a scooter, and he had a bag full of waste in a plastic bag, and in a second he throws it down a culvert while driving the scooter, passes by a culvert and throws it down. And to me, that act is bad citizenship. But it's as much a bad citizenship if I didn't chase him and stop him and tell him, what did you do? You polluted my mother, and I can't let you get away with it. If he had to, in the movies we see somebody criticizes another person and uses a nasty swear word against a man's mother, and you fight with him, you beat him up and stuff like that. It's as much that feeling, right? It's your mother and you're polluting her. You're destroying that nature. And so I tried to chase him. I couldn't spot him, and he had gone away too fast. But the point I'm trying to make is if the thought of, it's not my business, why should I get into a fight with him? It's not a fight. It's about the emotive ownership you take for desecrating your own, the country, the love that you have for her. It's not about singing the national anthem or flying the flag alone. Those things matter, it's symbols. For many today, citizenship is just bursting crackers after India wins the World Cup. And the next day, they wouldn't even worry about all the mess they have created by bursting their crackers. The hundreds of animals living on the sacred land of India, which are affected by the crackers bursting, the pollution you cause, they don't think about it. I can celebrate my nation. I love my nation. I also watched the match. I also wanted India to win. But celebration is more responsible celebration because it's my country. That is good citizenship. So every day I get up, I remind myself I have an obligation to myself, forget to others, to conduct myself in a manner in which I can actually contribute. So the space of giving is what citizenship is all about. Today people say it's a space of entitled taking. And I think we need to redefine this and make ourselves appreciate. So I think there are three levels of citizenship that I can intellectualize. So I've given the emotional part of it. The intellectual part is enlighten yourself with information. The state and the citizen has a very nuanced relationship. State by definition is structured violence. And therefore it will say wear a helmet, stop at a signal light, pay taxes. And you don't want to do all that. But the state does it because the largest social construct has to be maintained. And so it doesn't mind causing this tension and violence in you to follow and to comply, right? Everybody wants to live life their own way, but the state makes you live in a particular way. You can't pollute, you can't throw stuff around, you have to follow rules of the road and rules of conduct, etc. Now, and if I were to tell you this is how you should conduct yourself every day, it is an emotional violent act trying to force you to do something. And that's what the state by nature has to be that way. But the relationship is far deeper than that. Because the state is that way, it thrives on having much more information than the citizen. And therefore, it has got greater power than the citizen. Today, the Honorable Prime Minister talks about a very forward-looking way of looking at the relationship between the state and the citizen. He says Jan Bhagidari, or he talks about partnership state where we are equals. As much as the state has a responsibility towards a citizen, we as a citizen have a responsibility to maintaining the state of the nation of India. Now, that nuance means reducing the asymmetries of information and power. So whether it's Right to Information Act, etc., which can be made by the state to facilitate that equalization, but the citizen has to use that. How many of us consciously get up in the morning and say, I don't understand why the state is behaving this way, I'm going to file a Right to Information Act. I don't understand why this pothole outside my house is not getting repaired, I'm going to file a RTA, or I'm going to question my corporator, pick up the phone and ask him. Or the road is getting laid, I'm going to question the contractor who's supposed to show thickness of 4 inches of asphalting, but he's only doing 4 mm or 10 mm of asphalting and getting away with it. Can I file for RTI, fight for this cause? Why should I say it's not my business? So there is an action part of citizenship also. So the first part is enlightening ourselves with information, reducing this asymmetry as a proactive step. Now, if you ask children today, they can tell you which actor, which movie, when they did it, even to the point where somebody gets married, it seems to be a national celebration in our country today. Some actor getting married, and recently I was seeing that every headline seems to be that nonsense. But children are following that. Will we know about how many days Parliament met? What is the percentage time of the Parliament, and what is our budget today? And what are we as a nation? What are we supposed to be fighting? And how many of our soldiers have lost their lives in just terrorism or in what happened in Operation Sindoor? Are we engaged? So for me, an enlightened citizen then should become an engaged citizen. Start engaging with the instruments of the state. And finally, when the state also responds to the citizen, I'll feel very empowered. I'll feel that I have a voice. I'll feel that I can find my lost voice, and that is real expression of citizenship. So I think it's a constant tension of getting enlightened, continuing to engage with the state, and constantly empowering ourselves, speak truth to power, and not worry about ನಂಗೆ ಹೊಡೆದು ಬಿಡ್ತಾರೆ, ನನ್ಗೆ ಯಾಕೆ ಗ್ರಾಚಾರ ಇದ್ಬೇಕು, ನನ್ಗೆ ಯಾಕೆ ಆಗ್ಬೇಕು, ನಾನು ನಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತೀನಿ ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ ಬಿಡಿ. No, every time we see something going wrong, can I have the courage to say, this is not done. You're accountable to the citizen, you're accountable to the system of the state, and therefore I'm going to question you. I think that would be my expression of good citizenship.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Proactive citizenship, taking onus of the
citizenship by
both
definition
duties
is
and
proactive.
responsibilities. Yeah, beautifully said, sir. And do you think 2047 developed India is a possibility?
I think I have absolutely no doubt. No, having seen it from very close quarters, having seen the state facilitating it, it would happen sooner than later because the state is ready to make the citizen an equal. Now I am worried whether the citizen is ready to be an equal. You know, when I wrote the book, I, the Citizen, I was talking about the state being a facilitator, a catalyst of creating this equality. Today, if I were to rewrite that book, I would say the state is getting ready because we have a prime minister who actually believes citizen is, he says, Nagarik Devo Bhava. He just moved into a new office called Seva Tirth. And the slogan, byline below the office heading is Nagarik Devo Bhava. The citizen is supposed to be my God, right? But the citizen, does he behave like worthy of being a God? That is something we need to question. So by 2047 can happen earlier if we get to understand that I have to be worthy to be the divine expression. And citizenship for me is that divine quality. It's also a spiritual expression of my relationship with this country of mine.
I just hope people like you are able to amalgamate Sanatana Dharma with this citizenship and, you know,
people
somehow
like
manage to, yeah, well, you have to be there at the helm of affairs. Yeah, but that's beautiful. I think the two together have a huge power. Right. So you founded the Swami Vivekananda youth movement at 19 years of age while still in medical school. What was the specific moment or site that made you decide to start then rather than waiting for your, finishing your degree, etc.? And how did you handle the weight of your parents' expectations versus this calling that you had?
Actually, I didn't want to be a doctor. It was not even part of my radar at all. And being born in a typical middle class family in Bangalore, the parents, the only knowledge you have is either be an engineer or a doctor. And therefore, when you have a choice of when you graduate from the 10th class and get into PUC, your parents say, take PCMB. And because either you can become an engineer with PCM or PCB, you can become a doctor. I actually wanted to be a computer engineer and computer scientist. And so I thought I should get into IIT. But I wanted to get into IIT, but maybe IIT didn't want to let me get into it. So I didn't qualify. But I had a very high percentage. I had 99.67% in PCM. And those days, there were no entrance exams. And so we only got in by percentage. It was then called regional engineering colleges. Now they call NITs. So I had applied to Suratkal and there was only one general merit seat for computer science. They just introduced it then around that time. And so one other student with 100% took it. I was 99.67%. So I was waitlisted as one. Very disappointed. I came back, joined Yao College for a while. I went and joined BMS Engineering College. Just took some branch, mechanical. The first day I went, I was very badly ragged. Rose's ragging was real, and ragging was really harsh.
Gosh,
and I never had the courage to go back to college, but then you can't stay at home, right? Mothers are very, very intelligent, and they can see through this a mile away. So I had to somehow create a story of going from home to college and getting back home, but not going to college. So no money to go to movie theater. What do you do? And BMS college was, Basangudi was, it's Ramakrishna Ashram, close to Ramakrishna Ashram there. So I thought the only place where you didn't have to pay money to get inside. So I just went, gates were open, parked my cycle, walked around, did that for a few days. And I think they have the monks there must have thought these guys, they are lovely or fruit orchard there. ಹಂಗಿನ ಕದೆಗೆ ಬಂದಿರಬೇಕು ಅನ್ಕೊಂಡಿರ್ಬೇಕು ಅವರು. So I thought I should prove that I'm not coming here to steal anything. So I started going to the library and spending time there. I think the next 2 months were the best periods of my life. I discovered Vivekananda more than a photograph that he was for me in MBS college where I studied. So here I discovered the power of his words, the power of just as the beauty of his language. I fell in love with his English. And I read the complete works. It was in 8 volumes those days. And 2 small books changed my life. One was called His Call to the Nation, and the other was called To the Youth of India.
Mhm.
To me, these 2 books changed the way I wanted to lead my life. He talks about go from village to village, go to the fisherman's hut, to the cobbler's grove, and serve them. He talks about, I call every young man a traitor who, having been educated at people's expense, pays not the least heed to them. His statements go like, I do not believe in a God or religion which cannot wipe away the widow's tears or bring a piece of bread to the orphan's mouth. So I felt I got to discover this God or this religion. The day I felt it very strongly, on September 30th or so of 1982, I still remember it. I said, I want to do this. This is the life I want to be. I come home, I see a telegram. Those days, telegrams actually came. Today's children will think telegram is an app, but we had telegrams those days. And so it said, join Mysore Medical College immediately. I got much lesser percentage, 92.3 or something. I was a couple of months late to the college. But then I thought it's a divine sign. The Lord above wants me to be a physician and do something else in life. So 82 to 84, I was struggling. 1984 is a precipitating incident which pushed me to start immediately. Otherwise, I had to wait to be a doctor. Now, I was posted in medicine, the first posting after preclinical. And those is preclinical of 1.5 years. And then we started clinical postings into medicine. And I still remember the ward called Kantraj ward in Care Hospital. And getting posted there, we had a patient who was a hypertensive and not responding to treatment. Every morning, the usual, you'd all gone through this, right? The professor comes, the assistant professors behind him, the associate professors are there, and then the PGs, and then the whole line till the third year student who's the 24th in line. So you hardly get to see the patient, touch him, etc. You're just watching all the talking. So every morning the discussion was around why is this patient not responding to treatment? So they called it very beautifully. We have these nice words in medicine. They call it malignant hypertension.
Malignant.
Then they added the label idiopathic malignant hypertension. Is not responding to treatment, and 30 days later he passed away. And we as medical students would come 15, 20 minutes earlier than the clinic starts because we thought at least that way we can test the patient, auscultate, workers, whatever the process said we can try to do, or pretend to be the doctor so patients believe we are important people too. And I saw the bed was empty, and the elderly lady was crying and putting up her aluminum vessels into a plastic. Those is the knitted plastic bags were that. And I realized she must have been the mother of the patient. This was a 44-year-old cook, a Brahmin cook from T. Nasipur. And they had 2 acres of land and they had sold it for his treatment. Widowed mother in 70s, crying, not even having the money to take the body back home. And she told me, I was the first person in white coat she saw that morning, and she used all language to explicit to communicate her anger and disappointment with the treatment and others, and held me responsible for her son's death, in a sense. I was trying to console her and say the best of doctors were there. They could not treat him because the treatment was not he was not responding to treatment. And then she burst out saying, "Yen treatment ಕೊಟ್ರಿ ನೀವು ಚೀಟಿ ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರಿ ಔಷಧಿ ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಕೊಟ್ರಿ?" So we were giving her prescriptions in a government hospital. She had no money to buy those medicines. The patient didn't die of malignant hypertension. The patient died of untreated hypertension. And that day, my world collapsed. I said, this is not the world I'm going to be a part of. This is not a profession I want to practice. I just want to give away and go back. And said, let me spend this year somehow and then decide what to do. But then once you read Vivekananda, he talks about you being the creator of your own destiny. So that day I said, I have been chosen for a purpose. Maybe this is the purpose. As long as there are patients like this, I have a job to do. And so I said, that was the first time of collecting money and I realized how generous the poor are. The patients around gave 5 rupees, 2 rupees, 1 rupee. I collected some 80 rupees. I still remember I had 10 rupees with me. I put the 10 rupees. We had 80 rupees. To take his body back home, I couldn't get a taxi. I still remember a Muslim taxi driver. He said 160 rupees is the money he needs, 60 rupees to go to Tina Sipo, that village, 100 rupees to do the servicing. He said, it's a body after I come back, I'm a serviceman taxi. I said, I explained to him, I have only 80 rupees. And that kind hearted soul told me, if you're doing this much, I can do that much. I'll take the body there. I told him, I'll come back and pay you every month 10 rupees. I'll definitely pay back the money. And that man was so moved. He said, no, that is my share to what you're doing. So I realized it is these people, and that is the population we dismiss of as poor. So that's what I thought. These people are they are actually rich despite being poor, rich in
Absolutely.
heart,
Yeah.
rich in giving. So that day I decided I'm going to start the organization, and
The
that was
mindset of
84.
abundance. I mean, the mindset of abundance versus the mindset of scarcity. I
Yeah.
mean, so well demonstrated by that. Yeah.
And I said I should do this immediately, and so I started the organization in 1984.
But that must have been a big step for you, isn't it? I mean,
It was, people didn't understand. People thought I was crazy. People never, and I did very well in my courses. I used to get distinction most of the time. So people expected I'd go to a master's, and I just walked away to the forest. I was the youngest sibling at home. My
Hmm.
brother and sister were already abroad. So I was expected to follow suit. My sister thought I'll write those days it was called ECFFG and come and join her in the US. They were disappointed, I would say, but they never deterred me from going anywhere. They always said, do what your heart's calling was. And I was blessed to have parents who believed in me, and my father, till he passed away, lived with me in Saragur, and great pride. So I was, I think, in a sense, privileged to have parents that I had and the family that I had. And I met my wife, a wonderful partner in my work, because of the work I'm doing. And so I personally believe it's only excuses that we can give not to do something. But if you have legitimate reasons to do something, I think God will find a way, or the world will conspire to make you succeed. And in that world is your family too.
Yes, 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 sir. So, but those 26 years that you've lived with tribal communities, trying to understand them, establishing the services for them, etc. What do these communities understand about life that urban, educated India has forgotten? What is it that we can learn from them, those tribal communities?
I think there's so much we can learn, and I would simply say read my books. But I'm going to use this opportunity to narrate two different stories. I'm a storyteller basically, and these are real incidents that happened. Kempaya was a very elderly Kadakurba chieftain. And
Okay.
one day I used to meet him. Every evening he used to come and meet me when he was alive, and we used to talk about it. I learned a lot of leadership and tribal stories and lessons from him.
Mhm.
One day, just before agriculture season, I was visiting his place. And in that tribe, until the chieftain gives the seeds to you, you can't sow them. That
Right.
means
Oh,
you cultivate only when the chieftain permits you. And so he was very keen on uh, asking me to come and see what he does. So as I was watching what he was doing, he gave ragi to some, traditional paddy to somebody else, horse gram to somebody else, green gram to somebody else. And somebody would say, you don't sow anything. Land is going to be fallow. And I am urban trained, urban centric young man, thinking I knew economics is only maximizing your profits and living by that. So I thought this is absolutely stupid. And I said, this country can't afford to let any land fallow. That time we were not having enough food as a nation. So I said, you can't let land fallow. And he said, for you, the land is fallow. Come back when we harvest. I'll explain to you. So 6 months later, I went. The central part of the village is a community hut, which is called the Chavdi. He was sitting on that and saying, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮನೇಲಿ ಎಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ 5 ಜನ ನಿನ್ಗೆ ತಗೋ 4 ಚೀಲ ರಾಗಿ ತಗೋ. And he would equitably distribute, and people would simply accept. He's the chieftain giving it. The fellow was left his land fallow, also would get ragi and all this. And I asked him, he did no work. How is he getting? Why are you giving him also? Then he said, no, he did no work in the land that he has, but he has done work in everybody else's land, so he deserves it. And more importantly, or he also has to be paid for something that you can't see. And I asked him, what is it? He said, you see herbs and you see weeds and insects and pests. I see soil which has to be regenerated. I have to let it to also recover. My mother earth has to recover. And then she has to take care of the small insects which while plowing, I can kill. The earthworm that will get destroyed. So I'm not letting land fallow. I'm allowing diversity to express itself. And that soil also has to grow. And next year, you would give that fellow whom we gave paddy, this year you would give green grass. So he knew crop rotation, he knew diversity, he knew balance, he knew regenerative agriculture. Now, what do we know? So, real sustainable development he knew. He said, isn't it our responsibility to take care of everything God created? As much as the insect or a weed is part of nature, and that's diversity. Today, do we even think of diversity like that, sustainability like that? We sit in the air-conditioned rooms talking about sustainable development and nowhere near it. Other example I like to give is a Jain Kurba example. His name was Masti, and I always wanted to go with him to see how they collect honey. So Jain Kurbas live on honey. So one day he took me along. His son was there, and four other tribals were there. So we went 4-5 kilometers into the forest. A rosewood tree, I remember, that was around 40, 50 feet high, a large hive hanging in one of the branches. In minutes, his son just climbed up. He had a sickle in his mouth. He climbed up, rushed, like a monkey. He was up at the hive, puts his hand into the hive, pulls out the queen, holds his other hand like this, puts it under the hive. The whole hive moves under his hand, and the whole hive is hanging on his hand. Then slices the lower one-third of the hive. Bottom two tribals are waiting with the towel, it falls into the towel. Maximum honey is in the top two-thirds. Most of the wax, pupa, some larva, and a little bit of honey is in the bottom one-third. Then pulls back the queen, puts it back on the hive. Again,
Yeah.
my mind challenged Masti, and I asked him, how can you let most of the honey there? You did such hard work. You climbed up the tree, and you can't let the honey wasted there. He said, the song we sang while walking towards the hive in their language, and the song we are going to sing now as we walk back, it's a different song itself. The song they sang while coming towards the hive is asking the queen, bees, to teach lessons of staying together, working together, respecting the leader, and all that. While going back, they're singing, saying, please forgive me, Mother Queen, for coming in and disturbing your hive and slicing off and killing your pupa and larva. I know I have to do extra work for that. And then he told me, for us, what matters is we need that honey for making medicines for our children when they fall sick. But we didn't do the work. The work was done by the bees. And we can't steal. We're stealing actually. So we're asking forgiveness of the honeybee to forgive us for stealing. But at the same time explaining that it's going to be used for medicine. And she will forgive us for that. But if I take away all the honey she has put in, it is theft. Look at today's world. Urban-centric world, living for ourselves, always stealing. Corruption has reached such levels where we don't let anything go without stealing 80% of it. So we talk of 60% government and 80% governments, and such a shame we live in this world.
Yes.
And there, our tribals is talking about even a little we have to take for our need has to be with humility and asking forgiveness.
Yeah, and such
So
deep
there's so
respect.
many
that-
such lessons, and so
Yeah.
many lessons our indigenous tribal brethren can teach us. We have to have the humility and the patience to listen to them and learn from them.
True, sir. Beautiful. So, regarding the development work that you're doing, it often risks creating dependency, right? I mean, how do you distinguish between helping and enabling? And is it a project you've done that you're now, not so proud of or something? Essentially, it must have been a journey, evolution from, let's say, understanding the community, making them in terms of, training them, etc., in terms of capacity building. But difference between helping and enabling, and how was the journey for you?
I think helping itself is a wrong appreciation of what we do. Initially, I was only helping. I thought, okay, they don't have food, ensure they get food. They don't have clothes, get them clothes. They don't have a school, provide a school. That is helping. Helping is transactional. You expect people to be saying, oh, thank you, ದೇವರು ಬಂದ್ರು ನಮಗೆ ಸಹಾಯ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು. That is helping. Enabling is making sure the dignity of the other person is intact. He's a co-creator, and a co-creator can only emerge if you go with the humility of approaching these communities as a student, as learning from them, as completely, co-understanding the problem, co-defining it. And then once you co-define the problem, sitting together and saying, these are the few resources I can bring to the table. What are the resources you can bring to the table? Together, can we co-solve this problem? We might fail. So there's ownership, which is collective. Essentially, when you succeed, you let go of the ownership and say the community did it themselves. That is enabling. And they get back the courage in themselves. And we have done a lot.
Yeah.
Today, if you come to our project, see our women. Recently, Prajavani recognized one of my tribal women, Ragini, as an entrepreneur amongst tribals. She oversees a ragi-based food production unit, and people, women own it themselves. They run it, they own it, they make the money, and so that is enablement. Whereas if we are running it for her, then it is just helping. So I think learning to work for people leaves you in the helping space. Learning to work with people changes it to enablement. And that is what I have learned. It is a very harsh lesson. And we don't understand communities. Initial days when I went in, there's a tribal colony called Rajapura. I still remember. I went there one day and there were 15, 20 women sitting together with pots and about to go to the riverbank for water. As I approached that colony, there are no roads. You have to go through the bushes. And they walked away. And I thought, how disrespectful these women are. I'm coming, walking through this jungle, and they're walking away. And I said, where are you going? And they said, we're going to fetch water. And they would go walk 4 kilometers to get 2 pots of water, walk back 4 kilometers. Half a day is gone in getting 2 pots of water. So immediately my mind thought like, and it's river water. I still remember my professor of PNSM saying the river is the direct connection between the aboral end of people upstream and the oral end of people downstream. I thought, what should I do about this? So I went to the government, and the government was very responsive. They put up a borewell, a hand pump. Within a week, we got water at their doorstep. Just pump it out with a hand pump. 3, 4 months or a few months later, I went back, and Bomi was fuming. I still remember she was giving me all the curses in her language. Thankfully, at that time, I didn't know tribal dialect. Later on, I learned. And then after all the heat and dust settled down, I asked her, why are you shouting at me? I thought you will say, Devaru ಬಂದು ನೀರು ಕೊಡ್ಸೋದು. She said, now ನೀರು ಕೇಳೋದು ನಿಮಗೆ. So that is when it hit me. I presume what their problem was. So most of us, when we're helping, operate from zones of our competence. When you're enabling, you recognize your zone of incompetence, and then that gives you vulnerability and learning space. She told me, ಈಗ ನಾವು ನೆಮ್ಮದಿಯಾಗಿ ನಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ವಿ. We were walking 4 hours, not for getting water. We were walking because we wanted to be with ourselves, the women. We share our problems. We talk, okay, I'm menstruating,
Right.
I'm having a child, I'm not lactating. Now our husbands say, your water is there, why are you walking for 4 hours and just take the water? And we have to face a drudgery of 4 more hours of household work and beating husbands. So he said, you've provided us water without asking, but you took away our privacy again without asking. Not understanding communities is a great lesson that I learned. I said, learn to listen. Don't jump to a solution based on your competence. No, you have a hammer in your hand, you'll tend to see nails. Can I still hold the hammer in my hand? Have the competency I have a little humility and say, this may not be enough for me to diagnose the problem. Let me just learn from the people who are living with the problem and understand. So that was my greatest lesson, and that's helped me all my life.
Beautiful lessons along the way, sir. Enabling versus helping, and I think the women really needed that me time to essentially understand the community better, I suppose. Yeah. So let's come to your book. In your book, Power Within, this one, The Leadership Legacy of Narendra Modi, you explored the leadership style of Narendra Modi. And what was the core leadership question that you were trying to answer? And what surprised you most during your research? I think, and also it must have been a challenge maintaining intellectual objectivity when studying a leader who's still in power. So please, some insights into that work, sir.
There's a slight context to it. Again, I never really thought I'd work under his leadership or be in Delhi at all. I thought I'm going to be in the forest. And when I went to Harvard and did my fellowship in leadership also, I thought that maybe the narrative is the Western world teaches leadership, right? And I was also fed with that narrative. When I came back, I was troubled by saying that I don't think I understand leadership. Harvard never gave me answers, but possibly it helped me frame questions better. And that's a great contribution. And therefore, I realized possibly there's so much within our own scriptural wisdom which I don't know anything about. We don't even know if you ask anybody today what is Panchatantra, they'll say stories. Panchatantra is 5 principles, right? What are those tantras? What are the principles? And manifest it to animal life so that we can all learn those 5 principles. But we only look at the stories. And maximum we know Jataka tales of Panchatantra to Amar Chitrikatha. So I said, let me understand it deeper. Our children know Tom and Jerry more than they know Panchatantra. That's a reality. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that even I went through the same thing. My son went through the same thing. But then I said, I'm going to change it. So I went deep into it. Then one led to the other. Then I went to the Gita, some of the Upanishads. Then I went to Shankara's books, Drigdrishya Viveka, Atma Bodha. And I realized these are powerful leadership texts too. They are obviously spirituality is leadership in action as much as selfless leadership is also spirituality in existence. So I said, let me start compiling all this. So I started doing so much of research. It took me 13 years to put a body of material together. So for me, leadership essentially is spirituality in action. And selfless leadership is actually being spiritual. And so I put all this material together, went to my guru, Swami Sureshanji, who's shaped my thinking and life in a big way. He was a monk of the Ramakrishna order, who was the president of the Mysore Ashram also. And extraordinary Advaitin. And I went and told him, Swamiji, I've discovered all this. I'm reinterpreting the scriptures through a leadership lens. What do you think about it? He said, ನನಗಿದೆಲ್ಲ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗಲ್ಲ, ನನಗೆ ಅದ್ವೈತ ಕೇಳು ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ, but leadership ಎಲ್ಲ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. I said, no, what use is all this if young people today can't find a meaningful expression? That's why I'm trying to use this methodology. Then he said, I don't know much about all this, but I've heard of a person in Gujarat who's now the chief minister who had come to join the Ramakrishna order as a brahmachari. And my brother monks tell me he's somebody who manifests much of this leadership. So maybe you should study him and then you'll possibly find somebody to write about. Explain your leadership principles through that protagonist. I told him, Swamiji is the chief minister of Gujarat. I'm in a forest in Karnataka. How would I even know how his leadership is? So I just gave up. And that, because once you do a research, you don't want to just waste it. You know, the author in me said, okay, let me write a leadership lessons for daily living. And that's why I wrote it, in which I had watched Prime Minister Modi on television. At that time, I had become already the Prime Minister. I watched him on television hugging the then ISRO chairperson after the Chandrayaan-2 failed. And the speech he gave, that touched me and said, this is leadership material. But then again, he's Prime Minister. Chief Minister himself, I can't access. How can I access the Prime Minister? And I just didn't bother. Got out my book, forgot about it. 2021, when the call came from his office asking me to join this commission, which is in a sense, I see it as a great legacy of this commission also, where he said transforming bureaucracy is the only way we can deliver to our citizens. He's a great visionary, and part of this vision of Vikasit Bharat needs a delivery mechanism too. And he said, I have to transform the bureaucracy for that. And I need people. And he brought fascinating people together and said, it's your responsibility now. And this commission reports to him. So after the first year of working, I realized this is a man who I taught in flesh and blood. Today's example, which we keep saying Gandhi was like that, Vivekananda was like that, all dead and gone. We can't even relate to them except through their books or through some stories. Here I thought it's a flesh and blood example. Can I study him dispassionately? Having been a researcher, professor, and academic, I knew that I have to be objective. Can I try this? And obviously, to ask the protagonist permission. So it's essentially a book on Indic leadership presented to the world through the lived experience of the Prime Minister. So I went up to him and I told him, sir, would you permit me to study you to write about it? His immediate response was no. Now I was disappointed. 13 years of research. I said, I can't let it go. And I think in that moment of frustration, I told him, sir, there is Salka research hai, and just let me write. He said, why do you want to write? So many people have written about me. 400 books are there. I don't want another Modi Bhakt ka kitab. Then I told him, no, sir, I'm just a leadership professor and I want to write. He said, I'll say yes, but provided 3 conditions. First, he said, you write, but you have to understand that the world should learn from this book. It's not about Modi, it's about India's leadership, Indic leadership, he said. भारत की ज्ञान परंपरा को रिकॉग्निशन मिलना चाहिए. वो लोग को ये समझना चाहिए कि लीडरशिप बाहर से नहीं आ रहा है, हम इंपोर्ट नहीं कर रहे हैं लीडरशिप नॉलेज को, हम एक्सपोर्ट भी कर सकते हैं. एंड दिस इज सिविलाइजेशन विजडम यू शुड राइट. योर रिसर्च इज दैट, सो राइट अबाउट इट. दैट इज मोर इंपॉर्टेंट. डोंट लूज फोकस. That's what it was music to my ears. And I thought, wow, protagonist himself telling me that. Second, he said, this book should be a global audience, right? Keeps true to your research, make the book a global book. And the third, he said, make sure that 1,000 people who read, out of the people who read this, 1,000 leaders who serve this nation should arise. Now, the first two I've done honestly. I can justify every word I've written. I was criticized. I am sure people will criticize me and say he's also Narendra Modi, but especially because I work with him. While it gave me access, it's very difficult, watching a man whom you admire, you can get carried away and, you can possibly, I have been subjective in my writing. I delete it completely. I would never even keep it saying I'll change it. I rewrote the book 32 times, actually, to make sure absolutely everything is substantiated. My research notes in that book, if you read it, it's 50 pages.
Right.
I provide evidence for everything. It's a research book, and so essentially for me, the way I see it is, I'm telling the world what I've seen of the person with evidence as he is. Now the readers can make an opinion. People appreciate me till now. A lot of people appreciated it. It became a national bestseller in 1 month. Around the world, it's published. There's a US edition, a UK edition, there's an audio edition, there's a E edition, Kindle edition. It's a big hit, and all the proceeds, the royalty proceeds, goes to PM Cares, because I believe that this book is knowledge of India, knowledge of the Prime Minister, and it goes back to what is his favorite charities, PM Cares. So everything goes there. So to me, it's a great learning lesson to watch a leader in action. And somebody who believes that Seva Bhav is such an important instrument. Vivekananda said the national ideals of India should be Tyaga and Seva. And here I found a person living it. And he's wanted to start his journey as a sannyasi. The then monk at the Rajkot ashram saw something deep in him, Atmastananji, and told him, your destiny is much greater. Not you'll serve India, but not in Kavi. And Atmastananji then became the head of the Ramakrishna order itself. And the first person he went and took blessings from was him. He was already the head of the order. These are all recorded evidences of what an opportunity this nation has got in a leader like that.
True. Really, indeed. I should be grateful and very proud to have a leader like him, no doubt. So, what is one leadership insight from that work that applies to everybody, regardless of their political, sort of affiliations?
See, the Western world is all about being a leader. It's about I should be seen to be doing stuff. Indic knowledge, and also represented by a prime minister, is about the work getting done. It's not about I at the center, but the work at the center. For us, leadership is a verb. Being a leader is a noun. We never see it. Krishna was never a leader, but he exercised leadership. The second, leadership is always in context. We all play several roles in life, and the dharma of that role in that moment, in the context in which we operate, is what matters. And more importantly to me, leadership is about separating role from self. Many of us identify with the role so much. No, I can say I'm a doctor. I can say I'm a Harvard graduate. These are all roles.
Yes.
But the true discovery of the self, that spirit of self-inquiry, practicing it with selflessness. So nishkama karma. So 3 elements of karma yoga that goes into powerful expression of leadership which India can tell the world is. First is falatyaga. Sacrifice the fruits of your actions. Don't do something for consequences. Put your 100% in doing it right. Worry about it later. If you're operating on a patient, doing it right is what you should focus on, not on the operation becoming a success at that point of time. If you do it right with all your energy, it will become a success. There's no way it will fail anyway. Second is karma tyaga, not deciding what task you want to do. No, I will only do this. I will only do that. Today I was in the forest. Tomorrow I am in Delhi. I don't choose because I have to do what is given to me. And the third is kartatva tyaga. I am not the doer. It's getting done through me. When you start manifesting all these three, I think leadership expression is spiritual.
Very well said. And I think you go by the karmanyevadhikaraste as your sort of the mantra, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, When you look at the various crises that India faces today, do you see them as failures of individual citizens or failures of systems? And even during your work in the Karnataka, I think it was in the
Lokayukta.
Lokayukta, when you sort of raise your voice against corruption. Can you just throw some light about all, that sort of failure in systems and how this can be, let's say, improved in the future, near future? How do you coach young leaders to respond to failure without becoming cynical? And what is this power within that you really want every listener to begin to develop from tomorrow, from today?
See, a lot of us have not understood power at all. Power is a very funny thing. We only understand power over others. I'm the CEO of my company, so I have power over the entire employees. I'm the president of my organization or my country, and therefore I have power over others. I have power over others to do something, which means I can use that power to do something negative also. We have had presidents of countries abuse their interns in their office, or power can go to your head and it can take away your ability to manage your hungers, whether it's sexual
Yeah.
hungers or name and fame hungers or monetary hungers. Now, that's power over others to do something because you don't have the power within. So, power within is a very dharmic understanding of expression of your power over others to do something positive. And as an individual, I'll have a lot of power. I may have no power within me, but if 20 people go together, they still can get what they want. They can cook a hartal, a strike. That is power with each other. But power with each other over others to do something negative, burn a bus, throw stones, right? But you can have the same power with each other if there's enough people with power within to understand that I can achieve this without destroying public property. I can still get to have power over others. That's what Gandhi did and taught us that, power over himself to be completely non-violent in his thinking, word, thought, and action. That's what gave him the power over others.
Yeah.
And when power with others was misused, he would fast as a penance, as an atonement, right? And so I think we have to understand power within from that space. The more selfless work you do, that inner power will grow. And that evolves constantly. And that's why when I saw this, I thought the book should be titled Power Within because that's how I saw manifesting in the Prime Minister constantly. Because his only concern is the nation and others. It's never about him. So when he's criticized the equipoise he maintains, when Gita describes Sita Prajna, I have seen that in him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, as much as when the farm law was brought in, I believe it's a great act as a policy analyst because what Swaminathanji was dreaming about and what his committee report said was to really make India a great and economy different. And that act had the power to do it. For me, it was a celebration inside myself, but the PM was very calm and something he really believed in double farmers' income. It could have doubled. And when it was withdrawn, he went out and said, I apologize to the nation. Maybe I didn't understand people's pulse. I'm sorry. And he was not really in the dumps, right? He was equipoised. So whether it is conducting Operation Sindoor or taking criticism that leveled at him all the time, and at the same time, the 72%, 74% approval rating he has today, one of the highest approval ratings in the world, or when world leaders call him and say, even this war, they're saying only you can talk to Iran and Israel and ask them to end it. Yesterday, the ex-envoy of Dubai, UAE to India, said if PM can call these two, maybe the war can end. So that is the kind of conviction people have in this leadership and the recognition that people give. So to me, that is a power within that gets expressed, and that's a very powerful way of doing it. I can go on, so I think I'll stop.
Right, sir. No, but in terms of truly said the power within and how the equipoise, the samatvam, the sthita prajnata. But how do you coach young leaders to respond to failure and try to be a little sthita prajna?
No, I tell them that the way they measure success itself is fundamentally faulty. If you measure success from the metric of what is visible, the optics of performance, I say, right, then you are like an actor. But if you measure your existence by presence, and Just today, article of mine was published in Money Control, where I write on leadership there. And I talk about presence. You should be present by being absent, which young people can never learn it. So the problem is fundamentally the metrics of success is faultily defined. It's like measuring volume with a scale, and they can never get it right. So I always spend time telling them that listen first, learn to listen first to yourself, and then to listen to others. Show compassion again to yourself, then to others. When you show compassion to yourself, there's a lot more space for failure. And there's actually nothing called a failure. If you get into the lifelong learning mode, every failure is a great opportunity to learn. It's how you take it, and you can filter it and say, "Oh my God, I screwed up," or you can say, "What did I learn so that I don't screw up next time?" And so the constant internal chatter we keep doing to
Yes.
ourselves, I find that most of the time people are just destroying themselves with internal chatter. And sometimes they imagine the external chatter to be criticizing them. They don't even know how to filter it. So I give them the tools when I coach them. I've been a leadership coach of several people around the world, corporates, political leaders, countries even. And I tell them that can you practice drishti ba? The only two questions I simply ask them to do. Can you have practice spirit of inquiry? First of all, who am I in this context? What role am I playing? What is the relationship to others I have in this role? And therefore, what action I should do? That comes from these questions of spirit of inquiry. How do you understand this? By practicing Drishti Bhav that Ramana Maharshi and Ramakrishna Paramahamsa and Shankara talks in Drisha Viveka. Become a observer of the whole thing. Just separate yourself and see the whole game playing out. Recalibrate your actions, go back and act. And then you'll realize that you failed because you didn't understand the context. You didn't understand your role. You didn't understand the relationship equations. You didn't understand the actions you had to perform. So I tell them this simple definition of leadership. I say leadership is about understanding yourself, understanding others around you, and the actions that bind the self to the other. And if you can make those actions selfless without wanting it to aggrandize yourself and focus on the work that you need to do, I think that is spirituality in action that I spoke about earlier.
Beautiful, sir. So, what does your daily life actually look like? And when do you get time to introspect? When do you reflect? Do you journal? What are the small, boring habits that make your big work possible? What's the first thing that you do in the morning? Whether it's, I want the real answer, not the aspirational one.
I obviously, after the usual brushing your teeth, using the toilet, etc., I usually do meditation. That is something very important to me. And after that, my walk. At home, it's when I visit Mysore, unfailingly, my wife reminds me how much I have to walk. And that's also a time when we can discuss. And she's a great partner to have because she's also my bring sanity to my life and my inner conscience and keeps correcting me whenever I slip. When I'm in Delhi, also I walk. That's something very priceless to me. The problem comes when I travel, when I catch an early flight, and the walk is sacrificed. But my meditation is usually, I don't sacrifice. Meditation, pranayama is something I treasure it very a lot. So when I walk, I think a lot. Now I'm using my time when I'm in the plane to think a lot. And when I'm in the car in Delhi, when I'm traveling from home to office, the government does take care of us well, gives a car, a driver. And so when I'm either listening to a good podcast or I'm listening to Swami Sarvapriyanji's lectures or I'm listening to the Bhagavad Gita chanting by Swami or Chinmayananda's talks. So that keeps me grounded and also gets me to see things. Every time I listen to all this, I find a different appreciation of what they're trying to say. I read a lot. I can't read though I unfailingly try to get books on iBook on my iPad. I'm very pathetically bad in reading from an iPad. I like to carry a book, hold the pages and read.
Always.
So I'm still in that generation. So I do read a lot. I have a great library of books at Delhi here. So I try to keep up that habit. So traveling helps me do all that better. And I try to do real-time reflection all the time. So that is what the Drishti Bhav enables.
Do you journal, sir? Do you journal? You maintain
No,
any
I
gratitude
don't.
journal or reflections, etc.?
I personally don't, but I try to express my thoughts through
Your blog,
articles.
blogging. Yeah, your
Yeah,
blogs
and
are
now
amazing.
I'm now trying to find out messages for society through satire, because I realized I only used to write serious stuff, and readers don't are not there for serious stuff. So I tried to. It started off saying that I'll have to write about my life in government after I leave the government. Then I thought maybe people will not like it, so I said, can you make it humorous? Then I thought I'm not a satirical writer, so I started writing satire to test myself out, and now I
Right.
realize I write it very well. So my
Yeah.
friends, some of them call me today's old house, but I enjoy
Oh.
satire now. So I write now. Everyday events that happen to me, and
Mm.
how can I present that experience in a different way?
Yeah.
That's what I do. And
Okay.
if I don't have the experience, I can't write. So I usually try to look for experiences. And because I have to write, I reflect a lot.
Right. So our show asks, what does a life well lived look like? After the forest, the Ivy League, the halls of power, what's your answer today?
Being present after you die, even though you're absent, and that presence is not by you as an identity. Your real legacy is not having a legacy.
Right. Yes, sir.
And I
But
wish
the,
that could happen to me too.
but if our listeners were to ask themselves one uncomfortable question tonight to change their trajectory, what should it be?
Have the courage to look into the mirror, and don't blame the mirror because it's coated with dust and say the mirror is not reflecting me properly. Have the courage and the hard sadhana to wipe the dust off the mirror. Give a truthful reflection of yourself. And that is very frightening because people know that there are a lot of gaps. We don't want to meet those gaps head on. And therefore, we blame the dust on the mirror and say it's always somebody else who's the problem. Have the courage to see a true reflection of yourself, the conviction to correct it, and hold yourself responsible to correct it too. Not saying somebody else will come and correct me. Somebody will wave the magic wand and say you'll become better. That's not going to happen.
So when you're alone, no students, no policy papers, no cameras, what brings you the most joy? What's bliss to
Be,
you?
being alone itself is bliss to me. I generally like to enjoy the company of silence, the company of myself, the company of my inner self, and I miss it. The role I play today, it's so difficult to get that. So I love planes because many times I'm still a stranger. Unfortunately, in Delhi, when I take a plane, I may not be a stranger because there's already somebody I know. But when I travel to, I have, this position has made me travel around the country a lot, and so when I travel to unknown places, it gives me a space where my identity doesn't give me an definition of how I should conduct myself, just myself. And I enjoy that. So to me, being alone means being with the music I love, with the scriptural chants I love. And today, technology, a good headphone and a good
Yeah.
Apple phone helps me enjoy all.
Usa. Yeah. Well said. So, as a practicing obstetrician gynecologist myself and a Rotarian, I'm moved by your concept of citizen professional. I want to move beyond just donating and actually, contribute my clinical craft. How can we use the Rotary Network to scale maternal health models you've built at SVYM and help the capacity building commission sensitize public health doctors to the power within? What is it like as an individual? I mean, I want to go beyond what we've spoken. A listener, and I'm a listener today, and I've listened to your thoughts. This is my question to you. What do you think I can do to to
I would
to
say,
enhance my citizenship?
the moment you define yourself as a citizen, construct the professional roles that you attach to yourself. That's what limits us. Then you start seeing everything to the narrow confines of saying, how do I do maternal health or how do I do obstetric gynecology? A citizen is much broader. The role of a citizen encompasses and subsumes all the other roles you play in life. You play a role of a mother, a wife, friend, a sister. Every role has a dharma and play it to the fullest dharma that you can envisage. As obstetrician, you have a dharma too, and you'll play that. Anyway, you're trained to play that. But explore other roles that you're not even aware of yourself as. For example, as a citizen, you're walking on the street, you see a piece of paper there. Don't blame others for throwing it. Hold yourself responsible for picking it up. If you're buying a phone today, ask yourself, is your old phone actually dead? Do we need this phone? So I say there are three crises, not just our country, the world is facing today. ecological crisis, unprecedented one. We consume our resources that we need to have for a year. We do it in 2 months. And so the next 10 months of every year is the next year's resource we're using. It's like using a credit card without recognizing that credit is running out. We have a huge socio-economic crisis, the inequities the world is creating because of choices we make. And the third crisis, a bigger crisis, and I feel a greater demand of citizenship, is the crisis of the self, because I don't want to do anything about the earlier two crises. We have young people committing suicide, 8th standard child dumping out of the 20th floor and saying, I didn't do my exams well. What? How can you lose our ink to the madness of not understanding the self? And a citizen can play a role in all this. You can be a good counselor. You can be a good friend to the child who your domestic help's daughter might have a problem with mathematics.
Yeah.
The moment you say an obstetrician, you forget that you also learn mathematics and you can help her with that. So look for opportunities and roles in which we are all actually competent. All the competence you need is compassion. Nothing else
Oh,
matters. You'll
beautiful.
find a way to acquire. You will find a way to acquire everything else there. So to me, don't limit yourself by giving definitions of what you're good at. If you're not good at something, you will become good at it. But give yourself a definition of just saying, I'm going to make a difference in every small thing, every minute of my life. So whether it is the street dog that you see, or the cracker that you burst, which can destroy that poor little animal's hearing, or the paper that is thrown, or the refill that you don't need, because every conference you go, they'll give a pad, a pen, etc.
Yeah, yeah,
Tell
yeah,
the organizers, please ask us to get our own
yeah.
pads and pens. If you want to write down something, every time I go, I get a bag, I get a book.
Yes.
Have the courage to say no. You can't change them, but you can say no to take it, right? So begin with that. So that's the self. Take ownership for actions that you want to take, and slowly you'll become a circle of influence. People will start imitating you, and the goodness will spread. Don't worry about making others good. Just fight to. I keep telling this. Don't fight corruption anymore. I don't want to anymore. I say my only job in life is to decide how to fight to stay honest all the time in everything I do and talk about. And if we can do that, I think that is the greatest contribution Rotary can do, every one of us can.
Amazing, sir. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Dr.
Thank you so
Balu,
much.
Dr. Balu, I want to say something before we close. Obviously, you've walked 350 kilometers so that people in villages could hold power accountable. You spent 26 years in a forest so that children could go to school and families could access healthcare. You didn't do any of it for applause. You did it because you believed and kept believing. Continuing to believe. And even when it was hard, that one person living with intention can change the texture of the world around them, just like what you told me. This is what this show is about. For everyone listening, whether you're a student wondering what to do with your life, a professional wondering if your work means anything, or a parent wondering what values to pass on, I hope today's conversation with Balu sir gave you something more useful than inspiration. I hope it gave you a question, a really thought-provoking, plenty of questions to think about. The kind that sits with you quietly and changes how you act tomorrow morning. Because that's what Dr. Balu does. He doesn't give you answers. He gives you the courage to ask better questions. You can explore his work through SVYM, Gram. He's got a beautiful website, which I was really in awe with. And find his books, including I, the Citizen, Voices from Grassroots, which are both on their way home now. I'm waiting to read them. Leadership Lessons for Daily Living as well. And Power Within, which is the leadership legacy of Narendra Modi, which I've already got and I'm raring to go. And this is Luminary Lounge, and I am Dr. Aruna Muralidhar. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and keep shining. Before we leave, I'd like Dr. Balu to kindly say a few words to our listeners. Sir, over to you.
I think listening is by itself an art and a science. And if you can listen without judgment, if you can listen without prejudice, if you can just listen open-mindedly and test out what you listened. If it works, use it. If not, throw it out of the window. It's of no use to anybody, at least not to you, at least. So I think I write about listening in Power Within, Indic way of conceptualizing communication itself. I write about the power
Right.
of Vak. I write about Sadharanikaran, which Bharata Muni describes how we communicate 3,000 years ago, still valid even today. The most scientific description of communication I have come across. So I think if you learn how to listen, it's not listening to such conversations alone, but more importantly, learning to listen to yourself, that inner voice, which can enable that power within. And if we can all do that, not just India, we can truly make this world a better place for all of us. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you
you,
so
sir.
much for having this
Thank you.
conversation with me.
Thank you so much for your valuable insights and your most precious time. It's indeed an honor to have you on our podcast, sir.